Hello friends, my name's Real Emile and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we are going to be taking a look at executive sedans. Now executive sedans, or super saloons as some people call them, are basically modern luxury vehicles with big engines, and they usually have big top speeds and are full of luxury. Basically they're one of the most well-rounded sorts of vehicles in the world. Stuff like this, the Infiniti Q50L Rouge for example, is a good representation of them. It's a big four-door sedan, which means you can get many things inside it, and it comes with a big engine, which means it's extremely quick. In fact, the Infiniti Q50L Rouge is supercar quick. It has the engine from a Nissan GTR, which produces 560 horsepower. That's an awful lot. As in, a ridiculously awful lot. Especially for a car such as this. It also has 442 pounds-feet of torque. It does weigh about 3,800 pounds, which is on the heavier side of life. However, 0 to 60 is dealt with in 3.9 seconds, and the top speed of this car is insane. It can do 217.5 miles an hour. That's stupidly quick. That's faster than Zondas, that's faster than Ferrari 458s. That's about on par with, I believe, a Ferrari Enzo. This thing is hugely quick. However, of course, as you can imagine, the handling does let it down a little bit, or rather the weight does. This car feels a lot like the Nissan GTR to drive. It's not particularly spectacular. However, it's not hugely awful. It is a bit oversteery, it's a bit understeery. It does all sorts of steer. But it is controllable. It's got a four-wheel drive system, which is sort of what makes this car as good as it is. And yeah, it's a pretty good car to drive this. It's 100,000 credits as well. Bear in mind the GTR is 10,000 credits more than this. It's a pretty good buy, this, and that top speed is just ludicrous. That is the new benchmark for super saloons in my opinion. Next up we have the Audi RS7, and again this has similar figures to the Infiniti. The RS7 sports 552 horsepower and 553 pounds-feet of torque. Now it's from a 4 litre, I assume this is a 4 litre V8, or 4.2 litre V8, I believe that's what Audis usually use. I assume it's probably got some turbos bolted onto it as well. 4.3 thousand pounds, so this is a bit heavier than the Infiniti. However, it does get to 0 to 60 quicker, 3.7 seconds. That's insane, again. And a top speed of 206 miles an hour. Yeah, this is faster than some hypercars I can think of. To drive the Audi RS7, luckily, is nothing like the Audi R8, which was terrible. However, this car is ludicrously understeery. There's so much understeer in this car. I'm not sort of surprised. It's a big, heavy four-wheel drive Audi. But it is a bit of a shame. I do actually quite like the RS7 though. I think it's a pretty good looking car. I like the RS7 an awful lot actually. But yeah, the understeer does let this car down. But once again, this is a very good all-rounder of a car. And finally for Forza 5 we have the Mercedes-Benz E63 AMG. This is the new one. This is, I believe, the 4MATIC is what it would be called in America. We don't actually get the four-wheel drive one in England, but anyways, 577 horsepower from this vehicle, 590 pounds-feet of torque. Again, I'm assuming this uses the 6.3 litre V8 AMG gem of an engine, which is just fantastic and makes a superb noise. It weighs about the same as the Audi. 0 to 60 is dealt with in 3.4 seconds. Yeah, this is 3.4 seconds would be quick for a hypercar, and yet this four-door saloon full of wood and leather and all sorts, it's just insane. 206 miles an hour again is the top speed of the E63. Now as far as this car to drive, it's actually really good. There is a slight amount of oversteer if you come on the power a bit like an idiot, but if you're not an idiot with it, the E63 AMG is actually a really nice car to drive. Probably the nicest car of them all to drive here. Yeah, I like the E63. It's not much of a looker. from the front anyway, it looks a bit weird. From the back, it looks alright. Yeah, the E63 AMG is a pretty good car. Unfortunately, the light cups off there for some reason. Next up, we have the Jaguar XFR on Forza 4. Now, the Jaguar XFR has got a bit of a reputation in Forza 4. It's not the best car to drive. Yeah, it's. I've got it written on my notes here that it's slightly terrible. Yeah, it's not the greatest. Figure-wise, we're running 510 horsepower, 461 pounds-feet of torque, and it weighs 4,400 pounds. Yeah, it's not quite as insane as the figures on the other vehicles. Unfortunately, I can't get the 0 to 60 and top speed figures for these vehicles. I believe the Jaguar in real life runs somewhere around a 4-second 0 to 60 and goes on to just under 200 miles an hour. But yeah, the XFR isn't the best car in the world to drive, I've got to be honest. I actually quite like it, just because I like the Jaguar XFR as a car. The XFRS in Horizon 2 is actually a fairly decent car to drive. Unfortunately, we don't have that currently in Forza, although I am sort of praying for Forza 6 we can have that in. But as for now we have to deal with the XFR, which unfortunately isn't a particularly good car. It's got oversteer, it's got understeer, it feels heavy. It just doesn't have many of the qualities you'd want from a racing car. Next up, we have the Maserati Quattroport. I believe this is a GTS or some form of version like that. Anyway, this runs less horsepower than Jag at 433. It runs 361 pounds-feet of torque, so it's already at a disadvantage compared to the other vehicles power-wise. It also weighs the same as the Jaguar at 4.4 thousand pounds. Yeah. No. However, this car is superb to drive. I haven't driven much of the Quattroport, and I've got to admit, this was, yeah, fantastic. The only issue I had with this car is it does have long gear ratios. Compared to some of the other vehicles, this, I believe this didn't actually get out of third at any point on this lap. Yeah. The gear ratios are more set up for a top speed run. I believe this car in real life can do around 200 miles an hour. So it's not surprising, however, it is a bit of a shame, especially considering the other vehicles were running slightly short gears. However, I believe the other vehicles may have 7 gears instead of this, which I believe only has 6 because it's a slightly older vehicle. But yeah, all in all, the Quattroport is absolutely fantastic to drive. I can't remember, I think this is a DLC vehicle in Forza 4 as well. But even if it is, I recommend you give that one a try because it's a pretty good car to drive. Next up, in the sort of same class as the Maserati, we have the Aston Martin Rapide. Now, this is the most expensive vehicle here today. 200,000 credits for the Aston Martin Rapide, which is an awful lot. And figure-wise, it doesn't look like you're really getting that much at all. 470 horsepower, 442 pounds-feet of torque, 4,300 pounds. Yeah, those figures aren't exactly amazing. I mean, if we look at some of the other vehicles here today, this is the second least powerful vehicle here today. The Rapide isn't actually that bad. It feels good. However, it does feel a little bit light. This is a thing we kind of had with all Aston Martins. Even though they're not actually that heavy, well, they are quite heavy, they're not actually that light. They do feel light. This thing's very responsive. Which, I mean, if you like that sort of thing, then the Rapide would be the car to go for today. This is by far the most lively of all the vehicles. Me personally, I actually kind of like cars that feel like they've got a little bit of weight to them. It just makes them a bit easier to control, in my opinion. However, the Rapide is definitely not a bad car. However, that 200,000 credit price tag does kind of put this one at a disadvantage compared to the others. If you're willing to shell that out, however, this Rapide is a pretty good car all in all. And the final car for today, don't look at the rear end of it for the love of God. I've tried to paint it in the darkest, one of the darkest colours available. This is, well, this ugly creation is the Porsche Panamera Turbo. This has 500 horsepower, 580 pounds-feet of torque, and weighs about 4,300 pounds. On paper, this is one of the best cars here today. Yeah, pretty good actually on the figure front. And it also has that wonderful four-wheel drive. Now, most of the vehicles here on Forza 4, the Jag, the Maserati and the Aston Martin, were all running rear-wheel drive. This is running four-wheel drive, like all the cars that were on Forza 5 were. So that does make this a bit easier to control. However, this has a strange feel to it. I don't actually remember if the Panamera is rear-engined or front-engined, but it definitely feels like there's a lot more weight over the rear than in the other vehicles. It has a strange feeling. That cone went flying. I have no idea where that cone went. However, the Panamera was insanely quick. This vehicle is fast. But I expect nothing less of the Porsche Panamera. Yeah, pretty okay to drive, bit weird feeling, but yeah, my god, this car is extremely, extremely fast. Anyway, on to the times. And in 21st, we now find the Infiniti Q50 El Rouge. That's a fantastic lap time from that car. Bear in mind, it's a four-door sedan car. It's almost as quick as Corvette ZR1, just a couple of seconds off. It's faster than an Aston Martin Vanquish and a Lexus LFA. That is a very quick car. Likewise, Porsche Panamera 121.239. Pretty good time from that. Beats out an Aston Martin V12 Vantage and a Ford GT. Yeah, that car is also extremely quick. In 27th and 28th, we find the Audi RS7 Sportback and the Mercedes E63 AMG. Set roughly the same times, actually. They're extremely close, those two cars. And figure-wise, yeah, it's not hard to see why. The Audi technically should be a bit slower, but it's not. I just looked at the figures and, yeah. But out of them two, the E63 would probably be my choice for going racing. Now, in 35th, a long way down the board from the other few, we have the Aston Martin Rapide 123.365. Not quite as good as I was expecting it, however, it is faster than the previous benchmark, the BMW M5. And the Maserati Quattroport 8 and the Jag both find themselves in 38th and 39th respectively, filling out that gap between the Rolls-Royce and the BMW M5 finally. Yeah, the Maserati is down on power. If that vehicle had, I don't know, 100 more horsepower, I have no doubt we would be seeing that much closer to the top. As it stands, however, it just didn't have enough power, and the Jag, well, was useless, to be perfectly honest with you. Anyway, friends, that is it for today. This has been a bit early out than the other few, however, I'm making up for some lost time. Next week, I believe we're going to have Porsches. Until then, farewell.